I feel like I'm kind of the bad boy of this operation because, you've got really serious people talking to you, and I'm really not that serious. I'm basically a fun guy. I think I should start with my favorite joke right now. It turned out that the past, present, and future walked into a bar. It was tense. See, it's a slow groaner. I'm sorry about that. So, what I'd like to do is help you predict the future and maybe alert you to potential black swans that will change everything that you may not be expecting. Yes, we can expect government to screw up everything. That's not new. We can also expect various business cycles. That's not new. But technology every once in a while comes along and really messes with things. And I'll give you some ideas of things that I think might do that. I'm going to talk about cryptocurrency, self-driving cars, electric vehicles, remote working, remote buying, energy cost and availability. I think these are the big drivers in the future. And I think I have a little bit of different spin on several of these. Who am I? I started out as an Uber geek. I was a ham radio operator when I was 10. Before computers were available in the home, if you were an Uber geek, you were into ham radio. That's kind of what happened in the 50s. But then I got lucky. I was at the University of Utah when Dr. Evans hooked a monitor up to a big computer. And we used to break into the computer lab at night and play games. And I was working summers at an amusement park, and I knew the economics of a coin-operated game business. I had 2 arcades that were reporting to me. And I thought to myself, if I could put a coin slot on this monitor, it would make money in my arcades. But then you take 25 cents for 3 minutes of play into $1 million computer, and the math didn't work. But I thought, maybe someday. Graduated, moved to California, worked in Silicon Valley, and one day across my desk, I was an associate engineer at Ampex, a computer came across my desk for $3,000, mini computer. I thought, maybe that could work. I started the design process, and the computer was too slow. So I kept doing little circuits that would relieve the slow computer. And then I had the epiphany. Get rid of the computer and do it all with small circuits. The video game happened because I figured out a way to do a video game without a computer. None of the early video games were von Neumann architecture. That says there was no software. They were all state machines. And so the video game happened. I was a victim of an accident in space and time. If you were to have a computer screen connected to a big computer, there were 3 places in the world. One was MIT, one was Stanford AI Lab, and one was the University of Utah. Which one doesn't belong? Anyway, there we go. So I did Computer Space, which was basically a commercial version, and I molded that on my kitchen table and then spun it up with a fiberglass boat manufacturer. And then I did Pong. Now, there are 2 major innovations here. One is the Pong game, the other is the polka dot shirt. The polka dot shirt did not catch on, but Pong did. And to give you a little snapshot of the times, people ask me, how does the TV station know that I turned this knob? because the only way that things happened on a TV set was it came from a video station. That shows you how far we've gone, where, of course, computers display things. I might mention, the typical woman could beat the typical man at playing Pong. That was very empowering. I knew a 4'11" blonde woman who was a Pong hustler who knocked down $50,000 a year in 1973. Who knew? Then I did Chuck E. Cheese. People say, well, why did you do Chuck E. Cheese? Isn't that kind of silly? I mean, well, it turns out we were selling coin-operated games for about $2,000. During their lifetime in cash flow, the cash drop would be $40,000 to $50,000. I thought to myself, I'm on the wrong side of this equation. I want the cash drop. And so Chuck E. Cheese was actually a disguised series of arcades that served bad pizza. I said that. We really, we get accused of bad pizza, but we decided that we were going to be unabashed promoters of kids. Kids don't like spicy. And so if you're going to have pizza that kids like, parents are going to think it's bad. It might have been bad anyway, who knows? Anyway. But I will say that we were the first guys who did tokens. They weren't crypto, though a few years later, the guy got arrested in New York for selling Chuck E. Cheese tokens as Bitcoin. But anyway. Then I did some robotics company. This is my lab. I am a geek. And we did Anirbot. Boy, I lost a bundle on that one. I won the Transpac that year, sailing to Hawaii. But during that time, we were doing some early navigation. This was before SatNav. And I decided that, hey, we could do a lot of navigation very simply for automobiles without all this squishy stuff under us. And so I came back. We started ETAC. If you use Google Maps right now, you're using my software. So that was kind of a big win for me. Ended up selling it. I did a company called U-Ink. This was an attempt to be a new kind of self-ordering, game-centric thing. I also lost my ass on that one. The trick is not making a bundle. It's keeping a bundle. And you guys are much cleverer than I've ever been. I've been too ready to push things out. I put this up because no matter what happens, the economic supply-demand curve is almost always true. And so a lot of my predictions right now are pretty much based on the fact that if things get cheaper, you get more of it. And so let's go. Cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin. I at once thought that that was going to play a part in the world of mortgages, finance, what have you. Because anytime you have a gigantic pool of money, people want to figure out what to do with it, how to make it earn. Not so sure anymore. We're in what we call the crypto winter right now. And unless it really gets better, I'm going to take these slides out of my speeches. These are all the tokens. Do you know that 2/3 of these are worth nada, nothing? 2/3 of them. So if you were a proud investor early on, you're licking your wounds right now. Ethereum is about to go through a halving. A lot of people believe that's going to bring it back. Watch for it. It's happening in the next few weeks. But smart contracts are important, and I think smart contracts are going to be important in your field and others, as self-executing contracts have some really interesting advantages and can really facilitate kinds of relationships that can't be done with regular paper contracts. And I don't believe this in anymore, so I'm going to take that out. See, I can make a mistake and fix it right immediately. Self-driving cars. I have to give you a bias alert here. I'm an investor and board member of a self-driving car company. But the self-driving car is more important than world peace. Why? Because we kill 42,000 people on highway accidents every year. That's much more than we do in any kind of our foreign conflicts. But here's what gets damaged. Highway construction, insurance adjusters, parking attendants, all these jobs go away when a fully deployed self-driving car company happens. I'm on the board of Perrone Robotics, and Perrone has a very interesting model. They have a very tight stack, and the cost of self-driving is almost totally based on sensors. There's video, little cameras, cost about 50 cents. There's radar. Those are coming down. Used to be about $300, now it's about 20 bucks. LiDAR, which is lasers and various things, they're about $5,000 now, but they expect to become under $500. Why is this important? We at Perrone can turn any car, any vehicle into self-driver for right now less than $10,000. However, if we can hit $5,000, it's totally paid for by the drop in insurance cost, because self-driving cars don't do fender benders, and most of insurance claims are from fender benders. So if we can get to that point, magical things happen. For example, there will be things that will be known as office cars. These will be cars that you can actually work in an office while you're being driven somewhere, to work, from work, or just around town. Does that compete with an office? Maybe. Bedroom cars, what does that mean? That means that you can deploy your home significant distances from where you work. So all of a sudden it takes pressures away from the urban core, and this is going to affect the real estate in a lot of cases. Speed. You're going to be able to have tunnels in which you can drive 120 miles an hour from Santa Monica to downtown LA. No traffic jams, nothing. Because the minute you go to self-driving cars, the need for big trucks goes away. And if you, instead of having the 15-foot height, that can be 8 foot, you can create tunnels cheaply and efficiently, anywhere, anytime. And then we have the Uberness. It's not going to be Johnny Cab. You're just going to be talking to an Amazon Echo. Alexa, take me to the downtown. And it'll destroy 15 million current jobs. But think about Uber. Take the driver out, and all of a sudden, the cost per passenger mile drops to 20% of what it was before. Estimated cost per mile, 25 cents. Average speed, 40 miles per hour. Now contrast that with the New York subway system. Average speed, 17.6 miles an hour. Fare, $2.50. Which would you rather do? Would you rather take an Uber, or would you rather go down there with all the bums and the miscreants in the subway system? I go for the Uber every time. So my prediction is that every penny that is currently being spent on mass transit might as well be flushed down the toilet. It will not be used by anybody. Think about the waste. It's just the wrong time at the wrong place. And you say, well, yeah, no, but with all those Ubers, isn't there going to be traffic jams? No. Why? Turns out that when you have autonomous vehicles, self-driving vehicles, they can go nose to tail. Any lane of traffic that is now done by driver cars multiplies by a factor of 5 to 10 when put in autonomy. So all of a sudden, all the traffic jams go away. More than that, fuel costs drop. Because you've heard of in races where they do have drafting, if you're nose to tail with the car in front of you, you don't have to get rid of all the wind resistance. It's really cool. This is a picture from Elon Musk's boring company. They've got a technology right now that can drill through most stuff. Granite, probably the exception, but most areas, they can dig a mile a day. That's massive. It's really exciting. And so all of a sudden, our cities will become Swiss cheese of transportation systems that will make it easy and efficient and great fun. No big trucks. Now, what does that mean? Big trucks are there primarily for the efficiency of the driver. Take the driver out, most of the load is actually pretty small. And so with that, you have an atomization of delivery. And remember what I was talking about, 25 cents a mile? What does that do to delivery costs? Significantly drops them. But more than that, I believe that we're going to find that a lot of cities are going to garden their streets. You basically create a small tunnel. It only has to be one lane. And you bury it. So there are no surface parking, no surface traffic, no surface noise. You have wonderful restaurants going out onto the grass. Where there were streets, we now have gardens. We have parks. That's a better way to live. All made possible by self-driving cars. These are some artist-driven ideas of what we can do. Now let's talk about electric vehicles. State of California just said all vehicles are going to have to be electric, like 2035, I think it was. Well, it's a great idea. Here's a Tesla. My wife drives one, she loves it. But Tesla is actually, right now, it's really running on coal and oil. So you can't really call it green if you look at the source of energy. Right now, there are 275,000 vehicles in the United States. Only 1% are electric. So to convert even a fraction of those, all of a sudden, there's going to be something that is going to be unexpected. Lithium. Lithium is the prime driver for the batteries. Right now, batteries are about 25% of the cost of an electric car. There's not very much of it. Lithium is somewhat scarce. There's some in China, some in Africa, a little bit in South Carolina, a little bit in Canada, quite a bit in Argentina. But it's just not going to be there. My prediction is that 10 years electric cars will not double in price, not just double in price, but may triple, may quadruple. The problem is, as the prices go up, the demand drops. And no matter of government fiat is going, or requirements are going to help that. Poor people are not going to be able to pay $150,000 for an electric car. It's not going to happen. So what does that mean? That means that automobile ownership will drop, ride sharing, the Uber costs, that will take off, and so people will be in the sharing economy. What does that mean for real estate? You don't need to worry about parking garages anymore. They're going to go away, or at least significantly reduce in their demand. Why do I believe that? Economics. If things cost more, you get less. If things cost less, you get more. Every time. And I don't think governments are going to be able to screw that up, though they'll try. I'd say here 10 years personal car ownership will have. Might be more than that. These are short time frames. 10 years can go by in a blink. Definitely is going to happen in 20. Let's talk about remote working. There's no question that COVID was a singularity. Singularity is defined as trends that happened before have no effect on trends going forward. And remote working is a reality, and it's going to be with us for a long time. Right now, I have a company in which my CEO is in Spain, my chief marketing officer is in Stockholm, my chief technical officer is in Istanbul, I'm chairman of the board, I'm in Los Angeles. Our work is most of the software is being developed in Pakistan and Romania. Other than Zoom, I've only met 2 of those people. And the company is right now valued at about 10 million bucks. Not so bad. How much money have we spent on rent? Zippity-doo-dah, none. It's all homework. It's the gig economy, and that's happening all over the world for certain types of businesses, directly affecting the demand for office and work environments. I used to have a company that was in WeWork. We loved it. It was really fun. They had beer on tap at night. It was, anytime you can get free beer, that's worthwhile. But we moved out during the pandemic, and I don't think we'll ever return. Now we Zoom everywhere. Google Meet, Zoom. There's actually kind of an interesting thing that's happening with Zoom. The fact that you can share documents so easily. You use Zoom, you use Google Docs, you can collaboratively work in a better way than you could around a table. Hadn't realized that before. But it's so efficient, And I don't work in my pajamas anymore, but I could. But t-shirt and jeans, t-shirt and shorts, boy, that's really nice. I can't believe the number of suits that I've not worn for 10 years. I used to buy Armani suits and things like that. Pretty cool. I don't wear them. My sons, I've got 5 boys. A couple of them don't own a suit. And they're doing fine. Kind of says something about, 200 malls that are worth less than land value and tear down cost. You can see why. But there's a question. Malls were about retail, but they were also about entertainment. And I've wondered, when I think about it, we know that the millennials, the young people, they're more interested in experiences than things. And so I think that while things are definitely on the wane as far as being necessary for retail, I think experiences are on the wax. I think they're getting more important. Remote buying. We know that we have, let me go back, that slide's too big. Remote buying is really enabled and came to the floor for, importantly, with Amazon, eBay, Alibaba, Walmart remote. This is going to grow. Why? It's going to be because the cost of delivery is going to drop dramatically as it's atomized. And instead of one big Amazon box going around, there will be a packet switch network. For those of you who, I gave this speech to my wife and she said, don't geek out on that. Well, the packet switch network simply is a container that has an address. And the container knows where it's going, and it doesn't care what the vehicle is. So imagine, if you would, the Uber that I previously talked about at 25 cents or less a mile is carrying a pack. It has a little container in the back that contains a 1/2 meter by a 1/2 meter container. It's big enough to carry almost everything that you need to get from Amazon or Alibaba. And the vehicle, because it's carrying a passenger, turns left. The package wants to go right. So it's deposited in a kiosk on the corner and waits for another car, another Uber that's going right. The package is injected into the car and it moves on. Turns out that you can get packages delivered for a fraction of what it costs today. A fraction. Again, supply demand. If costs of delivery drop, it's going to accelerate the use. So now you have a retailer that's paying rent, paying employees, offset by online purchasing that is offset by delivery costs. All of a sudden, the equation gets cheaper for delivery while maintaining high cost for retail. So, this is what a neural network looks like. Packet switch network for goods. And then we have Costco that takes a lot of money out of the economy of regular retail. And these are the winners. But what was the mall about? The mall was about shopping, but it was entertainment shopping. People went not just to buy things, but to have an experience. What is the metaphorical equivalent of entertainment shopping in the online world? And it's the metaverse. A lot of people think that the metaverse is about dressing up your avatar in new skins and new weapons and things like that. That's only half of it. The metaverse is going to be a portal for online shopping so that you can go into a store or join a club. There are 14-year-old girls right now that are making multi-million dollars a year showing other 14-year-old girls how to dress, how to mix and match, what to buy, what to do. All of that moves to the metaverse. And now it's a click away from being able to purchase what is being described by these opinion leaders in the metaverse. It's not just about real estate. Now, you say to yourself, what are the real estate analogs in the metaverse? Do we care? What's one of the primary rules of real estate? Location, location, location. What are the onboard, where do the people onboard into the metaverse? When you're close to that, the real estate's going to be expensive because it's more important. This is one idea of what the metaverse is going to look like. I don't think that's it, but it might be. It's still too early. Facebook, turning into Meta, believes that it's going to happen. You know, they got a lot of money to help it happen, so who knows? 10 years, online purchasing will double. Another prediction. Incidentally, if any of these things are wrong in 10 years, you can come and see me and yell at me if I'm still alive. Robots everywhere. Robotics factories are the deflationary godsend that we have in this inflationary time. Right now, there are so many goods that you can buy for a fraction of what you did just 3 or 4 years ago. I bought a monitor the other day for $120 that 5 years ago would have cost me $600. Unbelievable. Anyway, what about energy costs and sources? This is where government can really screw things up or fix things. It turns out that wind and solar can't do it. Germany's tried it, several of the companies, but right now, the only really good solution is nuclear. Now, there are two kinds of nuclear. There's fission and there's fusion. There's literally billions and billions of dollars of venture capital money going into fusion research right now. When that happens, I believe that we're 5 years away from having a good fusion solution. Fusion is very cool because it runs on seawater, and we got a lot of it. Fission is safe and pretty powerful, and it's here now. So the smart thing to do would be build a bunch of clustered fusion reactors, get the transformers, the transmission lines, the generators, and you put them together so that when fusion actually happens, because fusion is going to create a lot of energy, because once you have containment, you get a lot out of it. So you're probably going to have enough energy to run 6, 8, 10 generators and have these mega facilities that will charge all the cars, keep the lights on at night, and not have brownouts during hot weather. People don't mention that if you rely on solar and wind, that hot weather is generally associated with high pressure area, no wind. Also, unbeknownst to people, the sun goes down and it's still hot. That's a problem. So if you want to have the air conditioner on after 5 o'clock, because by that time the sun's low enough, there's no effective solar radiation for solar power, you have to have batteries or backup or storage. Oh, did I mention there's not enough lithium? That's a problem. So fission and fusion are the only rational things that we can have. This is a nuclear reaction, or a fusion. You get deuterium, tritium, mash them together, extremely high pressure, and you make helium. So think of a fusion reactor as a helium factory. Fission, U-238, split it in two, boom, you get a lot of energy coming out. People say, but with fission, you've got a lot of these bad products, these, radioactive outage plants. Been totally solved. You know how you solve it? On location, you basically use old oil drilling techniques. You drill down about 1.5 miles and you put it down there. It's never going to get in the water supply. It's going to be there for anything that you want. Totally out of the way, totally safe, don't have to transport it anywhere. It's right there on the facility. So both of them are great solutions, safe, what have you. This is what a fusion reactor looks like. This one is, I think, in Switzerland. Here's one in China. Here's one, I think, in Princeton. I wrote a book several years ago called Finding the Next Steve Jobs. In that, I talked about how you get creative thought by saying yes. Steve Jobs was an iconoclast, and he worked for me. He started work at Atari when he was 19 years old. And we became great friends. A lot of my employees hated him. He was a little bit prickly, and he believed at the time that he didn't need to bathe. God bless him. He had always some kind of thing. For the one that just really drove me batshit was he decided he was going to become a fruitarian, where you only eat fruit. The only problem is that you run a deficit of certain chemicals. So in order to be a fruitarian, you have to drink a pint of your own urine every day. For me, that was a bridge too far. But anyway, I got to go a little bit further here. Because he was a little prickly, I decided to put Steve on the engineering night shift, which I might add did not exist prior to that. But it turned out to be a brilliant move because Steve Wozniak was working at Hewlett-Packard at the time, and he'd come and hang out with Steve. Now, Woz was a technical, and is a technical savant. There might not be a better digital engineer in the world than Steve Wozniak. And so I had them build a game for me called Breakout, which turned out to be a major win. And I gave them a bonus based on how much chip count they could remove. Well, they did such a good job that I had to pay them a $5,000 bonus. It's a lot of money in those days. So fast forward 20 years, Wozniak was sitting at my kitchen table. We were having coffee and talking about the old days. And I said, "What did you do with your half of the bonus?" He says, "I had a meal." I said, "Boy, that's a pretty expensive meal." He says, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, you know, how much did you get?" He said, $250, half of the bonus. I said, "The bonus of $5,000. Woz looked at me. He says, "That son of a bitch did it to me again." And I said, "You mean," he says, "he gave me $250. And he says, "But you know, I can't complain too much. If it hadn't been for Steve, I would have been an engineer at Hewlett-Packard, and I've never had this life that I've got right now." And so it was kind of one of those things that there was always the good Steve Jobs and the bad Steve Jobs. And then I have to tell you about my moment of shame. When Steve decided to start Apple Computer, he came to me and asked me to invest $50,000 for a third of Apple Computer. And I said no. Subsequently, I have regretted that decision. Though, the only one that regrets it more was my wife. I don't know. Anyway, we all have those. Woulda, shoulda, coulda. Let's talk a little bit about atoms to bits. Right now, we really have a lot of conversions from what was important, atoms, to bits. Bits are more important. Now, what do I mean? I can buy a pair of jeans in China for about $8. Any design, any fabric, any color, any treatment. But when I buy a pair of jeans, I pay about $80. When my wife buys a pair of jeans, she spends about $200. What happened to turn those $8 jeans into a $200 pair of jeans? It's design, it's fashion, it's design, it's fashion, it's marketing. Those are the bits. Those are all the bits, and it's happening throughout the economy. I was just saying, you know, in the next few years, we're going to get rid of credentials. Everything is going to be spatial face recognition so that you can be naked and get on an airplane. That would be cool. Once upon a time, telephone operators were considered to take over the workplace. Now, if you can find an operator, it'll happen. Education is going to happen in a big way. Medical and diagnostics. Everybody's going to have a smart toilet. Imagine your toilet saying that you're pregnant. It turns out that you can change a tremendous amount your health and wellness by regular checkups and intervention. Urinalysis is one of them. Colon analysis is another. And you're being instrumented all the time. Heart rate, fibrillation, blood pressure, even O2 levels, and in some cases, ATC, blood sugar. You will, in the next few years, be encouraged to donate a pint of blood every 6 months. A piece of that blood is going to be sent to one of these analyzers that will be able to detect trace proteins in parts per billion that will say that if you have as few as 20 tumor cells, it can alert you. Early diagnosis of cancer is the highest indicator of longevity. Now let's get wild and crazy and talk a little bit about Hyperloop. The Hyperloop system has to come. Think about going from San Francisco to New York in a half an hour. Why? Well, the Hyperloop is in a tube that's evacuated. And, you know, I'm running out of time here, so I'm going to go past this. But anyway, the Hyperloop's cool. And I just want to tell you what I'm working on now. I'm in Moxie. It's a company. It was totally funded by Crypto Institute. We raised $15 million all in Bitcoin. Our Atari Labs, we're going to hopefully use 1 million square feet of mall space. It's an arcade that has games that you can't play at home. I've got a Exodexa, which is a education company. That's the one that's all over the world. And I've written a book, The Future of Education. It'll be out January 1. I want you to all buy 30 or 40 copies and give them to your friends. Eat them for breakfast. It's okay. It's a manifesto of how we fix a broken education system. So go to Area 15 while you're here. It's amazing. It has just some future's ours to create. Thank you very much for your time.
That's great. Thank you, Nolan. So we're going to take a couple of minutes here to ask a few questions. I get the honor of asking most of them. Is this okay, Nolan? If anybody does have a question, we will have somebody walking around, so look around and I'll get to you in a couple minutes here. But the first question for you, Nolan, you know, a lot of your comments centered around trends that are already happening, trends that maybe some folks are not taking seriously enough, but others understand and are seeing the writing on the wall. A number of your slides said this X will happen in 10 years. And in our business, we do a lot of 10-year loans that have to come due and get refinanced on the permanent side. So if we're lenders in this room and we're deciding and we're looking at an office building that has a certain amount of parking or all of the things that you're sort of talking about, and we're funding a loan today, and that future doesn't happen for 10 years, but we're going to have to consider that issue when we now have to refinance it. What should we be thinking about right now? And should we adjust our expectations at all?
Well, the first thing you should know is that I will be massively wrong, one way or the other. It's either going to happen sooner or slower. Inevitably, it will happen, and the effects will be the same. It's very, very hard to figure out timing. I've been consistently wrong on both directions, where things have happened really fast and things have happened really slow. And I think that what we will find that the risks that you take now on a 10-year loan, for example, it's probably going to be plus or minus maybe 20%, no matter whether it happens faster or slower. So I don't think it's going to be massively risky for you. 20-year loans, very, very different, because I think there are going to be some sectors that are very, very damaged by this change. And what you don't want are the thing, you know, those decisions you make that can kill you. You know, if you can live to do another day, then, you know, as long as you're there. But these critical ones are really tough.
So not a panacea necessarily, but on a long enough time frame, it could be a significant set of changes we got to watch out for.
It's inevitable.
So you also mentioned the sort of self-driving and particularly the changes in the way trucks are going to be handled, whether they're last mile delivery or standard distribution. I follow a guy on YouTube, if you'll indulge me, that sees a lot of these things and sort of cheekily says, oh, you've got a self-driving car or truck, you put them nose to tail, you throw them on a highway at 60 miles, 80 miles an hour, you've got a huge chain of these things going down the road. What have you invented with all this technology but a train? So outside of the last mile problem.
It's a voluntary train. It's not
a voluntary train. Okay, so unpack it. Outside of the last mile issue where we're getting the good to the door or what have you, on a longer distance basis, how does the technology really give us an advantage?
capacity. I mean, just stop to think about when all of a sudden you have a freeway that can carry 5 times as much traffic without traffic jams or delays, totally safely, using less energy. That's cool.
On that topic with last mile delivery, I saw one estimate that said something like 40% of the cost of an Amazon good is related to delivery, plus the often forgotten issue of returns. And I've seen, small cottage industries sprout up everywhere. Remember storage wars? You'd have the self-storage thing and they abandoned it and then you auctioned it off. Doing the same thing for Amazon returns on pallets. So how do we solve the issue where maybe we can get the good there faster, maybe it's a little bit cheaper or a lot cheaper, but ultimately we have to have the opportunity for people to bring back goods that either are damaged or they don't like or what have you. And it seems to me that the return level is much higher on the online delivery. I don't have evidence to that effect, but
well, it's small, and there's this thing going on that Amazon hasn't really done, but I think certain buyers are going to start finding AI is pernicious and really smart, but when you do an Airbnb or an Uber, you have a you have a score. Are you a good user? Are you a good renter? And I think that if it got to be a problem of any sort, you could get an Amazon rating that says you're a good buyer, in which you don't return crap.
You're a 1-star because you're returning all the time, right? Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So you mentioned in real time we saw a deletion in one of the items with regards to cryptocurrency. And you've been active in NFTs and investing in Bitcoin and other cryptos for a long time.
You got to understand, when it came to NFTs, I've never been a buyer. I've always been a seller. I looked at NFTs kind of like tulips.
Be on the right side of the trade.
Yeah. I'd be a tulip seller, not a tulip buyer.
So is there anything that our industry, whether it's mortgage related or otherwise, commercial real estate, really does need to pay attention to in crypto?
Smart contracts. I just believe that when you really look at friction and waste, the paperwork and the amount of just crap that you have to go through with every transaction, and I just feel like that can be streamlined and cut costs tremendously.
So I'll ask you one more question, and then we'll go to the audience if there is anything. And then if we have time, I'm going to do a quick lightning round if you'll indulge me.
Happy.
Okay. So my final question is related to, as you said, malls or real estate in any way, shape, or form sort of connects people, whether you're connecting on an office level and you're collaborating with a team, you're going to the mall to have some entertainment. And you have said that the real innovation of Atari and essentially the video game industry that you helped create was that you were able to identify that people wanted to hang out together and I could make a little money by facilitating that. So my question is a broader one in that if the metaverse is the place where we do this in the near future, or one of the places where we do
That's
it.
better.
Okay. We only have so much time, so what drops off in your mind? What do we sacrifice as a society if we're taking on more and more connections in a different format?
I actually have been doing quite a bit of thinking about this. I feel like there's me and there's the 20-somethings. And I think there's an intergenerational problem where, if you look at TikTok and YouTube and a lot of the stuff that's so inane, and how many cute things can a cat do before you're tired of it? I would wish that there'd be less of that inane stuff going on, that it becomes more centric. The metaverse is going to have the problem of authenticity. There's going to be a lot of trolling, there's going to be a lot of synthetic people, or people who are old pedophiles pretending that they're cute 14-year-old boys. That's going to happen, and the policing of that, I think, is going to be an important part of the metaverse. How can you have authentication? But I actually believe that if malls reinvent themselves into entertainment centers as opposed to retail, and so what I'm really talking about is ratios. I think that that the ratios can move from 80% retail, 20% entertainment to 50-50, and they can stay in business. The problem with entertainment is it tends to be clustered weekends and late evenings. And so, maybe the whole time frame excuse me, of being open needs to be changed. The economic model needs to be adjusted. But the real estate, being able to park is important. Maybe you don't need as much in the Uber economy and all that, but I don't see a total death knell. I actually think that a lot of malls could turn into educational institutions that are much cheaper. And I think that spending $50,000 for a college education is ridiculous.
Or more.
Yeah.
And probably going up. So did we have any questions out there? It's hard for me to see. I'm scanning the room. Anybody have a question for Nolan? Yep. Oh, wait for the microphone if you could. Thanks.
Hi, Nolan. Thank you for talking today. My name is Anna Swartz-Lopez. I am here with Slack Capital. My question pertains specifically to electric vehicles and a lot of the changes that you're seeing in our cities and in our lifestyle is happening as a result of quickly adapting self-driving cars. I'm sorry, I said electric. I mean self-driving vehicles. My question for you is some comments I have heard on this subject is that while we may technologically be very close to having this as a possibility, from a legal perspective, we're much further away. So when you consider the body of laws that governs, let's say, liability, who's at fault in a car accident. It's very extensively worked out in our legal system. And once you make the shift to self-driving cars, well, yes, we'll have fewer accidents, but we will still have accidents. And the question is, well, then who's liable? Do you see that legal aspect of fully embracing the technology as perhaps slowing down your time frame a bit?
Well, if I understand your question, you're really interested in what is the liability when a self-driving car is involved in an infrequent but inevitable accident. There's a couple of things that happen. First of all, with every self-driving car, there's a memory. So you will have 100% knowledge of what happened and who is culpable. And yeah, self-driving cars will have some insurance, but the actuarial cost of that remediation will be fractional. So that if there is a fault in the software or the maintenance of the vehicle or what have you, there will be a payout, no question about it. And I think the axiom that says that if there is a dispute, the only people who will seriously make money will be the attorneys, will stand true.
Thank you. Great question. Yes, in the back in the blue, it looks like. We are asking you to wait simply because we're recording.
Thanks. Thanks again for your fantastic presentation. I'm curious about all of the build out of the fulfillment infrastructure. You talk about transportation and those kinds of things. And if there's an increase, a dramatic increase in remote buying, will there be a continued demand for additional fulfillment infrastructure, or is there going to be a shift because of the changes in transportation in terms of that type of real estate in the future, 10, 20 years down the road?
I believe that there will be some atomization that will go on, meaning that high velocity goods, where there is a benefit for quick response, will require satellite distribution centers that are sprinkled throughout a community. So that I think that there will be some companies that offer half-hour delivery, 1-hour delivery. And that can only happen if you have a hen and chicks kind of structure where certain things are proximate to the buyer. That will be enabled by this atomization of delivery systems as well. I also think that there are going to be new kinds of restaurants that are really nothing more than a kitchen with delivery systems. So think about gardening our streets and where all of a sudden there's a random table and chair out in the middle of a beautiful park. And you get on your phone and you order a meal and it's delivered to you literally as fast as a waiter could bring it to you from a kitchen that is 7 blocks away. It can be done either by small robotic vehicles or by drones. And I think that's really fun. And that's when, just so you know, I want the Alcoholic Beverage Commission to be eliminated. It saves a couple of $100 million a year, and all of a sudden we'll have laws that are similar to Italy. And now I could have a glass of wine or a cocktail sitting in the middle of the park. Now law won't allow it. So next time we get a chance to get rid of the ABC, would you vote with me on that?
Let's do it. The micro-fulfillment centers you're talking about, some are starting to do just that. We're seeing a hybrid, right, that's happening where I think Mary's presentation earlier, if a lot of you were in here, I know you sat in for it, the percentage of sales with Target online that's actually fulfilled in the store is huge. Yeah. Even Home Depot. What's interesting to me is the shift in focus on real estate with regards to any of these uses. So as an example, we have in our leases today co-tenancy clauses that says, I'm only allowed to sell chicken, I can't sell burgers. As of right now, Uber Eats is selling, burgers or fresh salads in a virtual brand store out of the same kitchen that Chili's is making their baby back wings. And so what does that do to all these co-tenancy clauses that are still in these long-term leases? I think as an industry, we've got to really watch. And as a landlord, think through these potential problems and see if we can solve them ahead of time, because I think it's going to become more complex, not less.
Definitely. Anytime you have a world, I like to use the word atomization. I mean, things that used to be big are becoming small. Yeah. And when you have that, you can actually have hyper specialization, or you can go in the other direction and you can have, hyper diversity. And you don't know, human nature is a fickle thing, and I'm constantly surprised at how crazy everybody is except me.
So we have time for one more audience question, if we've got one.
Hi, everything you've talked about is very interesting and seems to be reliant on energy, which you rightly pointed out that nuclear is probably the best way to go. However, in California, we only have one nuclear plant left, and they were even talking about shutting that down. Texas went through hard times last winter with the windmill things going down and freezing. We've had flex alerts currently in California telling us not to charge our cars between certain hours. Without building nuclear plants, which there seems to be a lot of aversion to doing, in at least the United States anyway, how are we going to generate that energy that's needed to power everything that you talk about doing? So I'm not sure where that's going to come from without maybe a change in political philosophy to drill more or produce more gas from that end of things. What is your future thought on how are we going to get there?
I may be a crazy optimist, but I believe that stupid government ultimately falls and that more intelligent government rises. And I don't know what that is, but clearly the climate warriors, I'll know they're serious when they start talking about sequestration. If you stop recycling and bury it right now, you hit the Paris Climate Accords. When I see fire breaks in California forests, proper forest management, I drove from Vancouver to Kelowna. Every 10 miles, there's a 100-meter 100-meter fire break. Do you hear of big wildfires in Canada? No. We can remediate a lot of things. Trees are a great capture. Until I start hearing all but that, I'm not going to listen to the people who are flying private jets to climate confabs. They're following the old Mark Twain rule. Doing good is noble. Advising others to do good is also noble, and much less trouble.
Okay, so one more minute. We're going to do a quick lightning round. So just real quickly, I'll cup up a couple of topics. You tell me which one you like, dislike, whatever, and we'll just run right through them. Future of work, is that majority hybrid office or majority work from home?
Majority work from home.
Bigger impact on the road, electrification of vehicles or self-driving?
Self-driving.
Electric vehicles most threaten which of the following? parking lots or gas stations?
Parking lots.
Blockchain's bigger long-term overall impact, not necessarily real estate. Smart contracts or NFTs?
Oh, smart contracts.
The metaverse, is this just a video game or is it true Web 3.0?
I think it's Web 3.0, and it's a alternative environment for inhabitation.
Which will be more widespread and adopted first, drone delivery or drone Ubers?
Drone Uber.
Wow. Why? I have to know.
The problem with drones is that they fail. And the cost of retrieval of a failed drone is huge, because once they fail, they get stolen, and the cost-benefit trade-off just doesn't work, in my estimation.
Which is the most worriest thing, worries is not a real word, by the way, on the battlefield? Cyber warfare, armed drones, or dirty bombs?
Armed drones. Dirty bombs are worse if they're going to be used, but I think that nobody wants to inhabit a place that they've already despoiled. You know, so if it's about conquest, it's not going to use it. But armed drones, that's going to be the warfare of the future. I mean, the power that armed drones have been happening in the Ukraine, that's considered by one of my friends who is kind of a soldier of fortune kind of guy.
Yeah.
He says that's been the total difference between what Russia didn't expect.
Artificial intelligence, net positive for humanity or net negative? Eventually.
It depends on whether they become evil.
Investments, ESG or fintech?
I don't have a clue on that one.
Last one, gold or lithium?
Lithium.
Nolan Bushnell, this is a real pleasure. Thank you very much, sir.